Welcome to Female Fractionals, the biweekly podcast for successful female fractional executives and those ready to take the leap. In each episode, I'll bring you actionable lessons and inspiration through interviews with thriving fractional leaders and experts. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Female Fractionals. I'm your host and fractional CMO, Amanda Nizzere. On today's show, I'm excited to speak with Kymm Martinez, CEO and founder of Wilder Marketing Group. Kymm is an executive with over 25 years of experience spanning organizations in Fortune 200 companies, nonprofits, and higher education. She brings diverse, real-world experience from the C-suite and the boardroom to help organizations unlock the full potential of their brands and marketing teams. Her past experiences include driving growth, reinvigorating legacy brands, and navigating complex organizational challenges. Kymm has served as the Chief Marketing Officer for the University of St. Thomas, the largest private university in Minnesota, and the American Cancer Society, the leading cancer-fighting organization in the United States. Kymm's career includes 2 decades at General Mills, where she rose to become a corporate officer, leading some of the world's most iconic brands, including Cheerios, Pillsbury, and Yoplait. Her leadership extends beyond borders with international experience in Latin America and expertise in building culturally resonant strategies. Collaborative, agile, and deeply strategic, Kymm is a trusted partner to executives seeking to make their marketing organization and brands a true driver of business value. Kymm resides in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and holds an MBA from the Kellogg School at Northwestern University and a BA in International Relations and Economics from Mount Holyoke College. Without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Kymm. Hi, Kymm. Welcome to Female Fractionals. I'm so happy to have you.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, of course. All right, so I want to kick the conversation off, and I would love for you to just start by sharing a little bit about your professional background, which is incredibly impressive, and just how you got started in marketing in general.
Sure. Actually, I have never worked outside of marketing. I don't know. I don't know if that's common for others, but when I was in college, between first and second year, I had a internship at a bank, a regional bank, and they randomly assigned me to the marketing department. It could have been anywhere, but it just happened to be there. And I've never worked outside of marketing since. So I got a really early start and a really early love of it. What I love about marketing is the opportunity to really walk inside somebody else's shoes, to look at the world through their perspectives, understand their pain points, and then figure out how, with whatever I'm trying to do, how I can connect to them and help solve and bring solutions to them. So I've always loved that empathy that comes with being a marketer. And then after my early bank days, when I graduated from undergrad, I went to work for MetLife Insurance Company in New York in their marketing area. It was a management training program where you got to rotate through different areas. And my rotations were always in marketing, just to continue to build different vantage points for that. But after 4 years in financial services at the time, I felt like I really wanted to, well, at the age of 26, I felt like I was teaching more than I was learning. And I felt like I wanted to go work for an organization that could really teach me the craft that I really wanted to learn. And so I set my sights on consumer packaged goods, believing that that classic marketing training that CPG is known for would be the thing that I really wanted to do. So to do that, I needed to get an MBA. So I went to Northwestern, to the Kellogg School, and then from there was recruited to General Mills in Minnesota, which Minnesota was never on my radar. I had a rent-controlled apartment in Manhattan. I fully expected that I was going to be back in Manhattan, but I ultimately couldn't turn down the General Mills offer because it just seemed like the training opportunity. It was everything that I'd been looking for. And so I made the jump to Minnesota. I'm still here. It's the classic Minnesota story. It's very hard to get people to move here, but once you move here, you don't want to move away. I was with General Mills for almost 20 years, really loved that organization, had an opportunity to work internationally. I was down in Mexico City working across all of Latin America. So lots of really great experiences there before I made the decision to move over into higher ed. So I went to work for the largest private university here in Minnesota, was their first ever chief marketing officer as they were really figuring out what to do with marketing in higher ed. led. I was there for almost 6 years before going to the American Cancer Society as their national chief marketing officer. And then just last year decided to step down from that in order to found my own business, the Wilder Marketing Group. So in a nutshell, that's how I come to you today.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So many little nuances that I want to try to tap into throughout our short time together. But where I want to focus in right now is what happened a year ago. Like, what inspired you to really take that leap to become a fractional executive?
Yeah. Um, well, I was hitting a milestone birthday. I was turning 55, and it was really a moment in my life where I felt like I wanted to take a step back and just do that exercise about what gives you energy versus what takes energy away. And there were also other pulls in my life. I have elderly parents, other reasons why having a little bit more control over my personal time would be advantageous and beneficial. And when I just did all of that, thinking, I did something I've never in my entire professional career have done. I left a job without having no idea what I was going to do next. I've always been super planful about all of my moves, and it just felt like the right thing to do, to leave and then to give myself the space and time to figure out what it was that I wanted to do next. And so that's what I did. I left, and then I really, well, I did all sorts of other fun things that I've been wanting to do. And my personal health had kind of suffered a little bit when I was working full time, just because I was traveling a lot and all of this. So just getting back into physical activity, and I started a new sport, which I've never been sporty. So just being able to do different things like that to challenge myself in ways that were going to be healthy, but also fun for me. Um, and through all that, I was talking to my network and just listening to what people were saying and advising and guidance. And a lot of people were saying, why don't you start your own thing? And I thought, well, um, I've never really thought of myself as an entrepreneur before, but it would really allow me control over my time, my who I was working with. It sounded exciting and fun because it was something I had no idea how to do. And I've always loved throwing myself into new experiences where I'm not sure I'm going to be successful, just believing that I'm going to learn more in that kind of an environment than one where it's like a slam dunk. Yeah, I know how to do this. And so it was all those things together that made me decide to start Wilder Marketing Group. And it was a little bit of a leap of faith because I know some people who start fractional businesses or consulting businesses do so because they have a client already in place, somebody that says, hey, if you start your own thing, I'll be your first customer. I didn't have that. I had a lot of people in my network saying, you'd be really great at this and you should do it, but I don't have a project for you. So it was definitely a bit of a leap of faith to, all right, how am I going to organize myself? But at the same time, it gave me time to think about what I wanted to do and the kinds of projects that I wanted to have, as opposed to just taking the first thing that came along because it was there. So I really do believe in the end, it was a bit of a gift to not have something immediately ready because it forced me to go through a strategic process that might have been delayed if I hadn't had to do that. So.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I want to tap obviously a little bit more into the work that you're doing now, but I do want to talk a little bit about for somebody that has always been so calculated about the pivots that you have made, which were so different, right? Moving from CPG into education, like very specific and big, bold moves. When you did take the step away at your milestone birthday and really were taking some time, I think burnout is real. We talk about it a lot. How did you give yourself permission to really take that break? And what did that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'm in a position now where I'm married and my husband works full time. So that provided me with, I didn't have the pressure of having to carry the insurance for the family, as an example. He has our children on his insurance. He has me now on his insurance. So that was definitely, well, now is also different. This is my second marriage, and I don't think I've never really relied on somebody. I've always been the breadwinner role. I've had that role in the family. So actually being able to take a step back and to let somebody else carry the load for a second was actually was a big deal for me, and it's something that I know I'm fortunate to have that. So, and along with that, also just the financial stability of having all those years of working and really saving. And I did sit down with my financial planner although I did it after the fact, I didn't do it before the fact, when I said, all right, can I stop working now, or do I need to keep working in order to be able to achieve all of the retirement goals, that we have? And happily, the answer was, you've got time. If you don't want to work, you don't have to. It might mean a bit of a different adjustment in terms of maybe a little bit of a lesser standard of living in retirement if I decided never to work again. But getting the financial knowledge and getting the facts about the financials in front of me was a big it allowed me to take that deep breath and be like, okay, I really am going to be okay. We don't need to cut the cable bill or whatever, and to really give myself the permission and the time. And then I did it I really did give myself some time. I said, I'm going to give myself a year, to figure out what it is that I want to do. I'm not going to put my pressure on myself, to figure this out in the next month or 2 months. And I think that's another important thing, to give yourself oodles of time. Although the funny thing I will say is, once I did decide to start my business, I did a business plan. And in my business plan, I gave myself 4 months to assess whether or not this was something I wanted to do. And so I didn't actually give my business the same permission that I had given myself personally, although people in my network were very quick to say, don't make any decisions at the 4 month mark. Give yourself a year in your business to figure out whether this is something that you really want to make a go of. So it was a little bit of that. But I also have defined myself, for better or for worse, by the job that I've had. So that was actually another interesting thing, stepping back from my last position and being, chief marketing officer of a national well-known organization. And now, like, when people say in the interim, what do you do? Just learning to get comfortable with that and realizing that there are a lot of other definitions for me than just what it is that I do in my day job. But that was also something that I just mentally needed to wrap my brain around. So then that took a little time too. I feel like I'm still a work in progress on that front, but yeah, no. So those were how I gave myself permission. And my husband was incredibly supportive. He wasn't excited about me never working again. When I came home with hey, I don't think I have to work again. He goes, oh yes, you do. But he would have been fine with it if that had been my ultimate decision. But he also knows that my drive is just really strong. I mean, I feel like I still have a lot to give. I still have a lot to learn. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to just fully take a step back. So that was another factor to my decision.
Yeah, I think that's great. Obviously, a lot of great reflection and thinking was done. And so that time that you took was definitely time that was hopefully restful, but obviously was also very well spent. So that is great. So you entered the fractional space without a client, which is amazing. I think you hear both sides of it. Some people are like,
Yeah.
oh, I just fell into it. And some people were like, I really had to hustle to get my first client. So how did you end up landing your first client and what did that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think I'd mentioned that what I was most worried about was the business development aspect of it, because I don't think of myself as a salesperson. I have definitely been on the other side of the pitch when somebody is trying too hard to sell you something. And I never wanted to be that person, or I don't want to be at a cocktail party where people are like, oh God, don't talk to her, because she's just going to like hit you hard over the head with, kind of like her new business or service. So I was worried about that part of it until I spoke with a really trusted confidant of mine, somebody who has worked with me for many years. And I was telling her about this concern, and she said, Kymm, she's like, more than anyone else I know, every time I see you, you've just had breakfast with somebody, or you've just had coffee with somebody, or you've just learned something new. She's like, that's all it is. It's those connections and fostering those connections authentically that's how you should think about business development. And as soon as I thought about it from that lens, I was okay with it because I do love making connections with people. And it isn't necessarily about me trying to sell. It is about me listening and learning about what's going on in their lives and all of that. And so that's kind of how I thought about the pipeline building in the very beginning. The goal for me was, how can I let my network know what it is that I'm up to and what it is that I'm doing? And then how can I make sure that my network remembers that this is something that I'm doing? So that's how I've been thinking about my pipeline. And that is actually how my first clients came to find me, was through that network. It was my very first client was an agency, an advertising agency that contracted with me to do a workshop because they were really interested in my chief marketing officer background, and they were looking to have their account team do some empathy building, frankly, with their marketing partners to understand what it's like to walk in the shoes of a chief marketing officer so that they can actually be a more indispensable partner to their clients. And this was a woman who I didn't know incredibly well, the CEO of the agency. But as soon as she heard my background, she said, I think if it comes from your voice versus my voice, what do you think about this? Let's create this. And that was my very first client, was that. So and then my other clients have come my way again via my network and people who've recommended me. So it's been a combo of, in one case, somebody who had worked with me, a former boss of mine, actually, a former chief marketing officer of General Mills, actually sits on the board of a company, and they were having a lot of marketing challenges. And he said, you should talk to her. But others have been more arm's length. It's almost like that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game. For me, it's 6 degrees of General Mills, because pretty much everything always has, it does seem like there's a little bit of a General Mills connection somewhere in there. That network is very strong, but it's not necessarily people that I've worked exactly with. So it's been a rung out, but it's important for people to know what it is that you're doing and to keep that alive. So.
Yeah. And do you find that when you're going into these engagements, are you having to differentiate between fractional and consulting still? I feel like there is still a need to define
Yes.
and sell. And so how are you
Yeah.
managing that?
Well, and not only that, I've even had to do that for myself. Like, so actually,
Right.
if you go right now to my website, which I need to update, because I did my website in the very beginning when I was trying to figure out what my services were going to be. And I didn't want to cut any avenue off because I wasn't sure where I was going to start to get traction in terms of my services. And so, I do talk on there about either doing interim work or fractional work without really necessarily defining, other than interim being 100% with one client and fractional being a part-time gig. What I'm finding is that I love being a fractional worker. So how I define that is, it's a part-time person, but I'm embedded in a team. So it's not going to feel like a part-time person. I'm part of the inside of the organization. And that's how I would differentiate between fractional and consultant. A consultant is more looking from the outside in, making recommendations in, whereas me as a fractional, I'm working from inside the organization. I can lead your marketing team or your efforts, even on a part-time basis, because I'm efficient and I've seen so much with my expertise that I can do things pretty quickly. I can see things pretty quickly, and I can go into spaces where you don't need a full-time person to do this, but you do need somebody with a seasoned background to help you. I can do that for you. Like, I can come in 20 to 40% of my time. And what you get is, you get a resource that is the exact right fit for the project or the challenge that you have right now. And what I get is flexibility and freedom and the opportunity to stack, meaning work on more than one client, which I have found is important to me because there's a great learning that goes as I look at the different clients and I see the different circumstances that they're in. And I feel like it helps to make me a better fractional CMO because I'm able to look at those different circumstances and make connections. So that's how I define the difference. And and that's a newer definition for me. So I do need to go back and I need to update my website to talk about that. But I recently, last week, attended a solopreneur virtual conference, and there was a lot of conversation in that conference about terminology and fractional versus consultant. And there was some debating. Some people like to call it a freelancer, and they're using the same fractional definition to define freelancer, and others are like, no, this fractional thing is a different animal, but I firmly believe it is the future of work. And that's another thing that I'm really excited about too. I feel like I'm on the cusp. I'm on the front edge of the trend into what is going to be really helpful for not only workers but also businesses, because you can get exactly what you need when you want it at the right budget. So
I definitely agree. And what I really liked that you pointed out, which wasn't part of the definition, but was part of what you were saying, was the fact that you have the ability to serve multiple clients and the lessons
yeah,
learned
yeah,
that benefit the clients
yeah,
are just amazing. There's the code switching that comes with that. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that with you.
yeah,
Is the question, I guess, is twofold. Is one, how many clients have you found can you manage at the same time? Like, what is your sweet spot and how long did
yeah.
it take you to figure that out? And then how do you handle code switching between clients?
Yeah, I would say because I'm newer into this, about 6 months in, I am still figuring out like how many clients I can handle. Right now, I've contracted for about 60% of my time between the clients that I have, and I'm not sure that I can take any more on at this moment. But I also know though that I'm still early days with some of them, and I understand from other fractionals that in the beginning, like the first 90 days is a really can be a really intense time, and then it actually evens out a little bit. So I'm interested to see whether that's going to play out for me as well. I also need to make sure that I'm watching how much I'm giving and that there are boundaries to it within reason. Like I definitely don't want to be like a law firm where every time somebody picks up the phone and calls you, it's like cha-ching, I do track my time for me. I do not want my client to be thinking at me as hourly or anything like that. But it's more for me to know what again, am I engaged in the most impactful activities on behalf of my client, or am I finding that I'm getting sucked into more regular day-to-day meetings? And that actually has been one of the biggest ahas for me, which actually maybe shouldn't have been, but as a chief marketing officer, a full-time chief marketing officer, I was in meetings all the time, literally from like 7:30, sometimes 8 o'clock, all the way through till 5. And then I wasn't able to do any of my real work until after 5 o'clock or on the weekends. Now I knew that, right? Like that
Yeah.
wasn't something I didn't know, but I also felt like all the meetings that I were in, there was a reason why I was there, because I would never have sat through it if I had thought it was a waste of my time. So I always saw value in it, but the aha for me now with not having a day full of meetings is how much I can get done during the day, how how damn efficient I can be
Yes, I feel that
without
very
those
much.
meetings. And so with my clients, I am very much resisting. They're like, "Do you want to be in this regular meeting? Do you want to be?" And I'm like, you know what? I don't. There's only going to be very few regular meetings, and I'm also tracking the difference between the meetings I'm sitting in and then the desk work that I'm doing on behalf of my clients, just to make sure that that balances. So I'm still figuring that out. But right now, I feel like I don't know. I think I ideally would love to be able to manage anywhere from 3 to 5. And I get that number from talking to other fractionals who are more experienced, who've been doing this for longer than I am. And those are the numbers that they're tossing out. And so that's going to be my goal. But I think right now, if I had 5 clients going at the same time, I might be a little hair on fire, which I don't really want. I want to walk before I run. And then as far as code switching between, again, what's cool is that I'm finding that I have a lot of templates just from in my brain work that I've done before, and I'm able to then bring those frameworks into my clients and help them work within them and then use those. So that's one way that I'm going back and forth between clients is sharing frameworks and seeing what's working. I'm also collecting information for myself about, so where do I think I'm adding the most value? Because again, I'm still in the early days of figuring out what's going to set me apart from other fractionals in this space. And for sure, having been a chief marketing officer twice, that's part of it, and the breadth of the experience that I have. But I think the notion of marketing as strategic support for the CEO, frankly, and really being able to work with CEOs who haven't been able to articulate yet their narrative for their organization. I'm coming in and they're asking me to do marketing plans, and I'm seeing that there aren't written down organizational strategies or objectives yet. And so I say to the CEO, that's our starting point there. And then once we know organizationally and everyone's on the same page, then we can write your marketing plan. And I think the ability to translate for the CEO from business over to marketing, I think is going to be kind of the niche that I am going to be using to add more value to my clients. And that's something that I'm definitely bringing from group to group. But the connection, the sticky glue between all of it is, where do you need a chief marketing officer lens? Because if so, then I will be equipped to help you. If you need somebody to run your website or run your social media, you're going to find a cheaper resource someplace else. I'm not going to be your fit for that. But if you want that chief marketing officer lens, and again, it doesn't matter if you can't afford that full time, because I don't want to work. I don't want to work for anybody 100% of the time. So that's how I go from client to client.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's great. Like, think about how much that may have shifted since,
Yeah,
where you were thinking you would have been a year
yeah,
ago to 6 months ago to,
yeah,
like, you're already saying that you need to refine the website a little bit.
yes,
It's amazing how much things can morph and shift like so
yeah,
quickly just based on lessons learned. And that's the beauty of owning your own thing, is that you
yeah,
completely control it, but you learn so much in the first year of building your own business.
yeah,
It's so powerful, and being so open to like niching down and changing the way that you do things is like, just you're embracing the entrepreneurial mindset, which is what is
yeah,
so amazing. And also just acknowledging the fact that you're 6 months in and you are saying that you don't think that you can take in any more clients. Like, I hope that you are like taking a moment to really reflect on that and congratulate
yeah.
yourself, because that's
Yeah.
huge. That is
Oh,
huge.
thank you.
So it's
Well, I
great.
guess I should also say that part of the reason why I don't think I could take on another one is because I'm super conscious about the need to do the pipeline. Like, if
Mhm.
I didn't have to worry about the pipeline, then I might be able to take on another client. But I am holding space for that essential networking activities that, because I mean, I don't know what's going to happen at the end of these contracts, whether they're going to get renewed or whether they're going to end. And so I am protecting also, in addition to my clients, that networking prospecting times. And but I'm finding it so fun and interesting. I mean, you can go and join organizations that will place you as a fractional executive, and there are marketing organizations like that. I believe there's also finance or HR.
Mhm.
There's all sorts of other ones, and I did think about whether or not I would want to do that, because some people don't love the running of their own business part of it. They would love to have somebody else, maintain the website and do the invoicing and like all of this kind of stuff. I am finding I love that. I did not know I was going to love that, but I actually do. And part of it is just because, again, it's something new. I also find strategy in it, just because it helps me shape, and, even just doing my own website I had to really think about what it was that I was communicating. I couldn't really hire someone to do it for me because I was doing it as I was going. And so I am loving that part of it. But there is a resource that I want to make sure that I mention, that I've been using a lot, and I know you and I have talked about it. But in fact, you and I, of course, had met on a webinar that Kellogg had done on fractional chief market or fractional in general, kind of like work. And one of the panelists there, Wes, and I'm going to butcher his last name. It's like Wales, Whelless. Anyway, he has a fantastic daily newsletter that he sent, or it's not really a newsletter, it's like an email.
Mhm.
And his company is called Develop My IP, all one word.com. And you can go, fractionals can go onto that site and they can sign up for that daily inspiration. It's free. And I'm finding a lot of what he's saying resonates with me and is helping me push through to defining what my own IP is. What does that look like? How do I put it out into the world? And so this journey that I'm on, I'm finding a lot of support from other people who are very willing to share their thoughts and help other fractionals. So that was one resource that I think your listeners would love to. And he also he's a consultant too, like, so you can actually do I think he calls it like a niche sprint or something, where you could contract with him to help you figure out exactly what your niche is. But reaching out and really being open to what others have to say. People are so willing to share their experiences. Like, that's the other cool thing. At General Mills, like, you'd never get a General Mills cereal marketer and a Kellogg cereal marketer to share any stories, like, kind of, because the competitive advantages of like, and the need to compete were so great. But among the fractional space, everyone brings their own different flavor to it. And there's enough work for everyone. And I think that because it's so new, people are willing to pay it forward in terms of people who'd helped them, and now they're willing to help others. And so finding others who can help you on that journey, I think, is also really important.
Yes, I completely agree. The community is really great and it's really strong and it's very
Yeah.
open and giving. So I
Fact,
couldn't
that
agree
West
more.
guy, because I was on that, because I was have been like looking at his daily thing, he was the one that told everybody about the free solopreneur conference that just took place last week, partly because he was speaking at it. But again, free, which I was like, wow, all of these free resources, which are so great, because when you just start out, at least for me, I was so loath to spend money. I wanted to do everything free because I wasn't sure how long this entity was going to be around. And there's a lot of people that are willing to make these resources available. And there were so many great speakers at this thing last week. So I went there to hear him, but then as I looked at the agenda, it was really robust. And I know there's a lot of those. So that wasn't a one-off, but there's a lot of opportunities like that.
That's great. That being said, are there any tools that you use that you have found that have really helped you as you've built the business in the early days that you would recommend?
Yeah, the other big resource that I had never really thought of before is SCORE, which I don't actually even know what that acronym stands for. I think it used to, like, a retired Corps of Engineers or something. People, professionals who are willing to give back on a volunteer basis. It's run through the Small Business Association, the SBA, but they have a ton of really fabulous like webinars, and you can actually get a free mentor, to help you, like, kind of like advise on your business. So that's one tool. I've done their webinars, and I don't know yet whether I'm going to do a mentor. I think it's going to decide. I'll see how far I get on my own with my business plan 2.0. But other tools that I've learned, the thing that I'm really fascinated with right now is automating my networking and my CRM. So I actually did decide to jump into a CRM. I use HubSpot. It's the free version of HubSpot. I haven't yet gone up to the $20 a month paid subscription, because I'm not yet sure what you get from that versus what I get. But what I have been hearing people do, and I know other fractionals that have been doing this, using AI to take notes during their intake calls with clients, or even just like, discovery calls, uploading that into ChatGPT, asking ChatGPT to give you words like that, areas of interest that this contact might be interested in actually for future follow-up. ChatGPT also will obviously draft initial follow-ups, emails, that kind of thing for you. Apparently there are some I think it's called Make, which will actually do the interface for you with a Google email, so that it'll land the draft in your draft. So all you have to do is go in and do that. Some people then take that and and download it back into their CRM. So in this case, HubSpot. So now you have the contact and you have the transcript of what you talked about, plus the summary, plus keywords. And then you can go in and search it. Like, if you run into an article that you think would be good for people to know on whatever it is, productivity, you can go back into your CRM and search for who's interested in marketing productivity and then send it through there. And then you can see open rates and like all sorts of stuff. That I am super excited about that vision. I haven't figured out how to get all the way there yet for myself, but those are some of the tools that's kind of where I'm trying to go. And what I also love about that, and maybe this is also why I love being, running my own business, is because some of my clients are smaller. And everything that I just described to you in terms of automating that sales process would be really helpful for them. And so it's almost like I'm figuring it out in Wilder Marketing Group, but then I can bring it to my clients as well. So it's not as if it's just for me. So I mean, AI is just a game changer. I can't imagine running my business without AI. So those are just some of the tools that I've been using, and I'm excited to get to know better. And that's like the next couple of months. Again, that automating that pipeline so that some of these outreach efforts can be more automatic, because it goes back to that objective that I was saying. I want the people who know me I want to be top of mind for them. Like, it's not enough that 6 months ago I told them that I was starting this. I need them to be reminded of that, but not in a heavy-handed, salesy sort of way, but just, and that takes a lot of time if you're trying to do that on a one-to-one basis. So how can I automate that so that people just remember that I exist? And so
That's
I use
great.
LinkedIn a lot. I love LinkedIn, and I'm a big fan of that social channel for a business. So I do spend more time on probably really on my LinkedIn social than any other socials that I'm on. But so LinkedIn is another big one for me, and they do great webinars. I just sat through a webinar the other day on how to do your own videos, like how to add. Because my videos right now are just like me with the phone, but they're helping to up your game in terms of like easy ways and tips and tricks. So just staying open to those kinds of things.
Yep. That's great. That's great. Super helpful. Okay, looking back to, these first 6 months, if there was, one piece of advice you'd give yourself in thinking back, what would you say to yourself?
Um, Yeah, I would say give yourself a break. Because again, as I said to you, I literally was like, wow, I'm going to launch this thing in September. And then by the end of the year, so by the end of December, I will have my first client nailed and it will be at this amount and all of that kind of stuff. And it takes a long time to lay that groundwork. And there was really no need for me to be. Actually, the funny thing is when I set that goal, I thought that seemed like a long period of time. Like, it wasn't like I was trying to go fast. I thought, well, 4 months should be. I think that giving yourself a break, and that's the advice, just not putting so much pressure. Control what you can control. What you can control is the number of networking meetings, the number of contacts, the number of that kind of thing. That's what you can control. And so that's where set your goals by that, whether it be 10 meetings a week or whatever it is, 10 connections, 10 whatever the right number is. Measure your progress by that, and not necessarily by, did I land the client by the date in which I said that I was going to? Because if you're doing that activity right, and if your network is going to start working for you, you've got to give it time. Although Wes, my develop my IP guy, Wes, has a really beautiful diagram too, where he talks about, there's the network that you have, and then there's what he calls the warm network, which is the network that they have that they'll help you access, and then there's the stranger network outside of that. And he says the importance for long-term pipeline is to get into that stranger. So that's where some of that automating of what I'm talking about is trying to help me to get a little bit more there. I'm still mining my network and my warm network, but it takes time. And set a realistic goal. And again, for me, it also went back to the financial plan of all right, how much, how am I going to pay my living expenses, kind of in the meantime, and how long can I go before I have to start thinking maybe a little differently about spending or about income coming in, and really giving myself the runway to be able to figure that out.
Yeah,
So that's what I'd say.
that's great. That's great. Okay, well, it seems like you are loving this entrepreneurial life. Do you
Yeah.
think that this is the path that you will be on for the long term?
Yes, yes. It's funny because I know sometimes, and I've met people this way who are using the consulting or the fractional or whatever as sort of the placeholder for like the next big job. And in fact, when I stepped back from the American Cancer Study, I definitely had people saying, "I think you have one more big job in you, Kymm. So why don't you look for, kind of like that?" And I call those, for me at least, my hair on fire jobs, where it's just like, oh my God, you go all in and then your hair is constantly on fire. And what I'm finding in this gig, my stomach isn't in a knot when I wake up in the morning and pick up my phone
Mm.
at like, what shit show am I going to find, kind of like that's in there. And that's again, another nice thing about being part-time. Like my clients know I'm part-time. You don't have me. I want you to have me and access me anytime you need me, but it's not that same sort of like on-demand thing that you have when you're full-time with just one organization. So, so for me, the control, the being able to, the benefits of it have just been really great. So what I am worried about is other fractionals who've warned me that, year one is great, because again, you're fishing in your network and your warm network, and then all of a sudden there's nothing. You go through a dry spell. I am a little worried about that. Which is what is driving me so much to continue with this pipeline activity and all of that. But I do really love it, and I know, well, LinkedIn still sends me all of these like, hey, you'd be a good chief marketing officer fit for this job. I know that I'm walking down the right path when every time I get those, it's delete, delete, delete without even opening it up to see actually what it is. That's how I know intuitively I'm in the right spot.
Yep, I feel that answer very much too, personally. I feel every bit of that answer. Okay, well, I like to end every interview with rapid fire questions. So these are meant to be answered in one word or one sentence or less.
Okay.
So are you ready for rapid fire round?
I am
Okay, okay.
as ready as I can be.
First job that taught you something valuable.
I taught piano in high school, so I kind of had my own business. I had 12 students in high school that I was responsible for, and it was my first exposure to running a business, actually, which wasn't a connection that I made until recently when I started thinking back to it. But keeping my books, figuring out how I was going to get clients, managing the feedback with the parents. So that was my first job that really taught me that.
That's cool. Okay, best investment you've made in yourself.
Let's see. I First of all, my second husband. I just can't say enough about the importance of having the right life partner by your side, in terms of really giving you wings in order to be able to fly. So there's that. But I also periodically in my life have invested in an executive coach for me, where somebody who I can bounce ideas off of and just be like, hey, this meeting felt a little off. Like I just felt like I wasn't maybe my best self. Can you help me kind of unpack a little bit of that? So I am a big fan of executive coaching. And then, really tactically, the other best investment I made was in my logo, for Wilder Marketing Group. I tried really hard not to spend any money on it and to do one of those DIY programs. And as soon as I looked at it, I was like, oh, I just cannot represent myself like this. So I hired my former creative director at one of my jobs to come in and help me out, and he nailed it. And every time I look at my logo, I feel happy. So that was also a great investment.
That's great. Okay, fun fact about you that's not on your LinkedIn profile.
I have never had a headache. So, and that is God's truth. I've never had a headache.
Um,
So I don't know why.
knock on wood.
Yeah, I know that's true. I will knock on wood because I don't want that to start now. But yeah, no, that's a little known fact.
Oh. Okay, early bird or night owl?
Night owl for sure.
Okay. Mentor you'd like to give a shout out to.
I think I mentioned earlier the chief marketing officer of General Mills, who actually was on the board and had brought me in. It's this phenomenal man named Mark Addix, who I cannot say enough wonderful things about the marketer that he is and the fact that I got to work under him and really see how he pushes the boundaries and the way he thinks. I have brought him in as a inspirational speaker at every organization that I've ever been at, for him to push the thinking of my team. And now he's in a position where he's also kind of helping me with this. He's just been such an amazing advocate for me and a mentor to me and a friend. And again, whatever he's done for me, I absolutely just want to pay that forward to other people. So he's just been a great, great role model.
If you could instantly master one skill or hobby, what would it be?
Singing. I wish I could get on stage and sing like, Mariah Carey or Whitney Houston or Kelly Clarkson. I can't, but if I could master one talent, it would be what would be that? Or Cynthia Erivo and singing that wonderful like end line to Wicked, that everybody is like trying to do now. I would love to be able to do that.
That would be amazing. Okay, two more. Last thing you impulse bought.
Um, Just last week, I impulse bought, and I feel like an 80-year-old by doing this, Skechers slip-ins because it's one of those things where I do find I'm like, who has time to tie their shoes? Like, I'm like, I just need a shoe that I can just go in and, Martha Stewart was dancing around in the Super Bowl ad, like kind of like in her Skechin gliders. And so I just impulse last week. I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm getting them. And they're coming. I ordered them online, so I don't have them yet, but that was my last impulse buy.
Okay, we need the review. We need the review on them. Okay, and finally, what's the most adventurous thing you've ever eaten?
Well, I lived in Mexico City, as I mentioned, and so down there I had crickets. There were crickets in a Parmesan, and then I've also had ant larvae, which also is something that was a delicacy down there. So I don't think I knew I was eating ant larvae at the time that I did. I found out later, especially with the translation of Spanish to English, but those were the most adventurous things I've eaten. And they weren't terrible. It just is kind of gross when you think about it, but it wasn't so bad.
Oh, okay.
I know.
Well, on that note, well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. This has been a great conversation. I think our listeners are going to have learned so much from this.
I hope so. There's just so much fun ahead of people who are going to jump into this fractional pond. So I hope that more people do it and get to take control over their lives and who they're working with and just feel more agency over, stepping into their power a little bit more, especially women. So I'm excited that you're inspiring women to do this and super excited to see where your podcast goes and to follow you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If anybody wants to learn more, I will put a link to your company and your beautiful logo in the show notes and on the website. And thank you again.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is really fun.
As always, please remember to follow, like, comment, and share. And don't forget to head over to femalefractionals.com for a full transcript of the show and links to everything we talked about during our conversation. Thanks for listening.